Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Funnel Trade. I got another question from a patron, this time about serialization and the lack of serialized cards in the Spider-Man expansion. So let's go over and read that. He says, I had a discussion with some folks on another smaller MTG community and was wondering what your thoughts might be on non-inclusion of serialized cards and sets going forward. I'm genuinely curious, just from a business perspective, what happens there? It seems like a no-brainer decision to the point where I'm questioning what in the world could an outside observer be missing here if you just strictly look at it from a business perspective. So I like the question because it shows how we kind of get trapped in these kind of intellectual silos and in terms of this other MTG community, an echo chamber essentially, and we can make assumptions that are difficult for us to even recognize that we're making. And so it helps to ask other people and discuss things with other people. And of course I do it too. And so that's why I have people I like to discuss things with to get different ideas and try and figure out like what is it that I'm missing when I'm really confused about a problem. So the Spider-Man expansion is not going to have serialized cards. Rudy pointed out that this is the potentially the first randomized Universes Beyond product that does not have serialized cards in it, and that potentially it's just a big missed opportunity. I'm going to take a little bit of a different view, and I'm going to compare it with serialization of cards in sports cards. And when it comes to Magic, the vast majority of magic that is purchased to play with. And then a lesser amount of it is purchased for collection. And yes, there are a lot of magic collectors out there. I know a bunch of people who select every expansion. They buy a bunch of boxes of cards and they put them in binders. People still do it. I know it's kind of a thing that gets mocked and we act like it doesn't ever happen and like those days are gone, but there still are a lot of people out there who collect magic and want the sets. Okay. So, regardless of that, it's still a minority, even though they still exist compared to the people who are buying magic to play with. The collector dollars coming into Magic are much smaller than the player dollars. Where in the sports card world, there is no game to play. So it's all collector dollars. In the sports card world, if you're Tops or Donruss or Panini or whoever else, you can make serialized cards. You can just make them as far as the day is long. You can make serialized cards, and there will generally be interest for them. And you can do things like, every single player in the league, you got a couple little serialized subsets, variant sets for. Maybe they only have, 5 copies or 10 copies or something. And then for the really popular players, you'll do bigger runs, you'll do more unique types. And so maybe you'll have an of 100 and an of 500 and an of 10,000, things like that. But the sports card world can absorb way more serialized cards than the Magic world can. And to take a quick aside, we could think, what could Pokemon absorb? I bet Pokemon could absorb a lot of serialized cards, but also I think it kind of wouldn't work the same way because you would end up with a lot of really upset collectors if they couldn't get their serialized cards. And so I think that might be why we've never seen them in Pokemon. And I hope they don't do it. But with Magic, when you make serialized cards, there just aren't as many dollars chasing them. And WotC needs to be really careful about it. And I believe they have become careful. And so when they first started putting serialized cards into randomized products with Brothers War and the serialized schematic artifacts, there were something like 63 or 66 different artifacts that got the serialization treatment. And they were each with 500 copies. And so it came out to 33 or 32 or 31,000, whatever it was. Maybe it was 31,500 is the number that's coming into my head. And so they produced 31,000 serialized cards in Brothers War. Okay, well, then a few months later, we had March of the Machines, and those had the Multiverse Legends serialized cards, which I believe were also of 500 and was another set of, 60-ish. And then a few months after that, we had Lord of the Rings, and that had what, the 300 elven rings, the 900 human rings, and the 700 dwarf rings or something. I know probably got those numbers wrong. And then I think there were other rings and other serialized cards and everything. So beyond the one ring that everyone remembers, there were a lot of other serialized cards in that product. And I did a video at one point a year or two ago where I pointed out that not too long after WotC had started producing serialized cards, they had already produced something like 130,000 serialized cards. And at the time, I felt that there just was not enough money coming in from collectors and from the subgroup of collectors who were interested in serialized cards to support those kind of prices. And I believe WotC saw the same thing. I think WotC was looking at data from a bunch of different places. And yes, WotC can go to Reddit, WotC can go to eBay completed sales, WotC can go get data from all those places too. They can get anecdotes and vibes and feels out of Reddit and all of these communities and these discords and everything else. They can go look at all those places too and try to get a feel for how things are going and how what WotC is doing is being interpreted by buyers. And I believe they saw that, they looked at it and they said, look, we are making way, way, way too many serialized cards. And so eventually we got the Lord of the Rings special edition, and it had the movie poster cards, which I believe there were about 20 of them, and they were serialized each up to 100. And then eventually we would get a year and a half later or so uh, Innistrad Remastered, and it had Edgar Markov as the only serialized card, and it was serialized at a count of 500. We got Doctor Who in there somewhere, and you had the doctors, and depending on each one, they were serialized of, the fourth Doctor was 504, and the eighth Doctor was 508. And you had what, about a dozen doctors. So 6,000 serialized cards. I believe what we have seen over time is that WotC has pulled back on serialization. They realized that they were diluting the money that could chase it way too quickly. And that what they would rather have, since WotC doesn't directly get those secondary market dollars, instead, they get it kind of by proxy in that people are more excited to buy the sealed product for the chance of that serialized lottery ticket. What they realized is they really want those serialized cards to hold high values in the market. And so they reduce the number that get produced. They reduce not only how many cards in each particular set might get serialized copies, but they started pulling back in general on the number of serialized copies. And so what did we see in Final Fantasy with the Chocobos? It was like 77 or 90 or something like that. Many, many fewer. And I think that's good. I think that WotC does not need to put serialized cards in every set. I think what they should be doing with collector boxes is have a set of different gimmicks and rotate them through. Have serialized cards, have textured cards, have really, really slick looking uh, showcase cards, have all kinds of different cool things you can do, and choose one of them for each collector box and have that be the thing. And then those different things will get refined over time. They'll have new ideas. Maybe some will get dropped if they're not received well enough. But what they don't want to do is try to cram chase value into every collector box the same way. And so I think most sets not having serialized cards is the right way to go. And having fewer and fewer total number of serialized cards being produced is good too. Now, the question then becomes, should Spider-Man have had serialized cards? It's the first Marvel crossover release. It should it? I don't think it had to. Would it have helped? Maybe. Um, is it okay that it doesn't? Yeah, the product is going to be a scarce collectible that people destroy for fun. Whether or not it has serialized cards, I don't think matters 10 years from now. And what can WotC do instead? Okay, well, maybe Avatar will have serialized cards. Maybe not. Maybe when they do X-Men, they'll have serialized cards. Maybe what they're going to do is not have serialized cards in any Marvel release until they get to whatever Endgame or, the big compilation series with everything where it gets really stupid and ridiculous and you cross over Spider-Man and X-Men and Captain Marvel and all the rest of them that we're so tired of at this point. Maybe then they'll put in serialized cards and they'll really just pour the cards in. And you know what? Instead of 4 booster packs in those collector boxes, it'll be 2. And instead of 15 cards per pack, it'll be 8. And they'll charge $2,000 a box. Maybe they'll swing for the fences like that. That's a little bit preposterous, but they could swing a lot harder if they say, okay, the only time you're ever going to get serialized Marvel IP cards in Magic is this one set off in the future. Well, people would go nuts for it. Maybe that's what they're doing. Now, I don't particularly believe it is. I don't have a reason to believe it is, but it could be. And maybe they just said, hey, we did serialization with Final Fantasy, and so let's let off the gas here. Let's not do serialization on too many sets in a year. And so they just decided not to do it on this one. I don't think it's bad. I think it's good that they pull it back. They make sure that those very limited number of dollars that are flowing from Magic collectors into serialized cards remain concentrated enough amongst a smaller number of serialized cards so that the prices stay high. Because that's what really benefits WotC. It doesn't help WotC when they release the Brothers War schematic artifacts and 6 weeks after release, you could pick up a lot of those things in the 100, 200, $300 range. Even for some desirable cards, mechanically desirable, I mean, you could pick them up for just a couple $100. That's not really what they want. I think they much more enjoy things like Edgar Markov today, 7, 8 months after the release of Innistrad Remastered, where that serialized card is trading back in close to $3,000 again. That's what they really want to see because they want people to feel like that's a lottery ticket. They want to exploit that gambling tendency that a lot of people have. And they want to play on that and have that work out. And the way to do it is for those cards to have very high secondary market values. And the way to get that is to not produce as many and not put them out as often. I think they can be very successful in not only serialization, but continue to be successful with collector boxes if they do that. Because again, you don't want every collector box to have the same chase gimmick. You want neon ink, you want special showcases, you want textured cards, you want serialization, you want all the other games and gimmicks they can play with chase value in the collector boxes, rotate through them so they feel a little fresher again. So that's my opinion on it. And, I'm not terribly wedded to any of those ideas. And I could be wrong about all of them, but those are at least my thoughts. And they hopefully get you thinking in a different direction where you come to this question, you say, I don't see any other alternative. At least by discussing it, maybe we can share other alternatives and get us out of those echo chambers and intellectual silos to where we at least say, okay, so there are other possibilities. Maybe some of you guys discount the possibilities I've laid out to near zero. That's fine. It's all an opinion, and disagreement makes a market. So let me know what you think, guys. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade. Buy a hat.